So we all know Deathly Hallows, Harry Potter, one book, two movies. But do we know why? I know a lot of people are like, well, they just wanted more money. Probably. It was a very successful thing. But if that was the case, they would have done that from Goblet of Fire on. Like, hey, look, Goblet of Fire, two movies. Order of the Phoenix, two really boring movies. Half-Blood Prince, two also really boring movies. And then Deathly Hallows, two movies. But there's a reason behind why they went with two parts rather than one. Steve Kloves, the screenwriter for Deathly Hallows, wrote the script, and after looking at it was like, yeah, I think this would probably break down to be about 4 to 5 hours. It was 500 pages long, and yeah, he said it would probably be better to be two parts. So Warner Brothers goes, all right, all right, let's make it two parts. And the producer, David Heyman, said after everything was filmed, because they filmed both movies back to back, after everything was both filmed, guess what? It came out to 5.5 hours. So of course, it was probably good that they split it into two parts. Welcome to Harry Potter Fun Facts. We are doing Deathly Hallows, part 1 and part 2 together. But guess what? This is going to be 2 videos. So stay tuned. Next week, we will post part 2. It is a lot of fun facts. Over 60 fun facts. There's some, well, it's technically 59, but some of the fun facts are going to be like multiple facts within a fun fact. So 60 plus fun facts all together. 2 whole parts, just like the movies. Guess what? Same thing that just happened with the movie with, hey, look, I tried to write it. It was a little bit long. We should probably split it in 2 parts. That's the same thing that happened with my fun facts is I tried to write it. It was a little bit too long, splitting it into 2 parts. So more videos for you to watch. And if you enjoy the fun facts, make sure to check out the playlist right here, which is full of Harry Potter fun facts, because if you like this style, make sure to check out more and make sure to subscribe because there's more to come with my Harry Potter content. So both Deathly Hallows 1 and 2 were filmed back to back as if they were one movie because originally they were going to be. They decided after the script was written to split it into 2, but they still filmed it all together to make sure that it was a cohesive story and then just split it at the best point they could. It took them over 236 days for them to film the entire part 1 and part 2 Deathly Hallows. Principal photography began February 19th, 2009. They finally wrapped on the actual filming June 12th of 2010. So yeah, it was 236 days of filming, but in total, it took them over a year to make these 2 movies, which is crazy. It took them that long, but it worked out. They made a butt ton of money. You know the 19-year later epilogue scene that's at the end of the Deathly Hallows Part 2? Yeah, that wasn't the first time that they filmed it. That was the second full scene that they filmed of that. The first one, they filmed at actual King's Cross Station, but the paparazzi found out, took a bunch of pictures, and then the scene was kind of trashed online because the makeup that they used made them look a little too old. So David Yates, the director, called everybody back and said, hey, we're going to do it in studio and we'll do lighter makeup and make it look a little bit better. It still wasn't great. I remember looking at it and going, this is awkward. Why do they look dumpy? It's like they're supposed to be, Ron and Harry are supposed to be Aurors who should probably be in somewhat of shape, but okay, whatever. But yeah, the scene was filmed twice. The first time at King's Cross, the second time on a soundstage that looked like King's Cross because David Yates was not happy with the first recording. And a lot of people were like, well, why didn't they just recast them as older characters? Well, David Yates didn't want to. And honestly, I agree. I think it would have taken everybody out. It's like, hey, these guys were 20-something-year-old adults. It would have looked weird if you had totally different people 40 years or 20 years later, basically. So I get it. I think it was fine. It was a good choice. Maybe now with the new TV series, they'll just digitally age them up a little bit more. They'll have plenty of material for them to look at to be able to age them up. So we will see in the future. So to me, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows is a heist story because in multiple times they are breaking in somewhere and stealing some shit. That's a heist. David Yates had a vision of the Deathly Hallows being a road movie and a verite documentary, which is more of like the shaky cam follow behind idea. Like more real, down to earth, eye level, like, hey, let's see what's going on. Like standing behind a bush, watching them as they're doing their thing, like kind of like The Office, but without the talking head part, which is great and all. But, it made for long scenes of them just walking through fields and, I wanted more action. I don't know about you, but it's like, you added fake action in all of these other movies, and then you have these action scenes that are already written, and you don't use them as well as you could have. But whatever, each their own. We're getting a remake of it, so maybe they'll do it more of a heist style breakdown than just a fly by the seat of your pants road trip movie. So the scene of the 7 Potters was one of the most complicated scenes that they had to film in the Deathly Hallows series, maybe even for all of Harry Potter. It took 90 takes just for a single shot, let alone all of the shots in that scene, because Daniel Radcliffe not only had to play every single person, but also they had to have body doubles and stand-ins for every single spot. So when he was supposed to be Harry, it wasn't the person who was there before. You also had everybody at different heights, shrinking to Daniel Radcliffe's 5'6". And so it's just kind of one of those things that, so many things had to go right, and it took over 2 days to make that scene. Unfortunately, filming on Deathly Hallows wasn't as fun all the time as filming 7 Daniel Radcliffes on one screen, such as Daniel Radcliffe's stunt double, David Holmes, who was unfortunately injured during an aerial stunt where he was thrown back against a wall and ended up paralyzed. It's a very unfortunate thing, and luckily he has survived, but, he will never be able to continue his job. I know he and Daniel Radcliffe were great friends before and have stayed great friends after. One of the most important things in the Harry Potter series would have to be the music. I don't know about you, but I think music makes the movie. And the Harry Potter series, having 8 films in the series, had multiple composers, because it's hard for one composer to stay on for 8 movies when they're doing other movies in between. Of course, with tradition, most composers, I think, only got to do 2 movies each in the series, and we got a new composer for the Deathly Hallows Part 1 and Part 2, which is Alexandra Desplat. Which, it's weird with a composer coming into a series like this, because I'm sure having to take what has been and add on to it, but keep it recognizable, is really hard work. And I think it's a testament to Alexandra that she was able to take what was there, but add her own twist to it and keep it feeling like Harry Potter. There's one character that was missing from Deathly Hallows Part 1, and that was Minerva McGonagall, Dame Maggie Smith. She was not in Part 1, and it was the only movie in that series that she was not a part of. But I don't blame her. She filmed Half-Blood Prince while battling cancer and won, so she deserved a hard-deserved break. And she took off for Part 1 and came back to be the badass that she was in Part 2.
Pier totum locomotor!
If you watched Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1, and as they walked through Godric Hollow, you looked at it and said, this looks rather familiar, it's because it was. It was actually the set used for Hogsmeade in Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, which what they did was just change a little bit of the set dressing and shot it from different angles to make it look slightly different. But next time you watch, take a look. It's the same set, just a little bit different. So in the sacking of Severus Snape in the book, it's McGonagall versus Snape fighting it out to eventually Snape's fleeing of the scene. In the movies, they originally wanted it to be Harry versus Snape, and the author stepped in and said, no, it needs to be McGonagall versus Snape. And honestly, the whole scene, the sacking of Severus Snape scene in the movie, I think is better than it is in the books. You have Harry coming out of the crowd and giving his impassioned speech of how dare you stand where he stood, and your security is a little bit lacking, Headmaster, as the Order of the Phoenix and Dumbledore's army come marching in behind him. And then you have the fight between McGonagall and Snape, where not only does Snape dodge everything that McGonagall throws at him, showing how strong Snape actually is, but he redirects her curses towards the Carrows behind him, which is, in fact, a super cool little detail to show that Snape wasn't all bad. We just never noticed it. So you know the goblins in Gringotts? Yeah, those prosthetics were extremely complicated. It took them 8 months to make each and every one of those goblin prosthetics because they had to individually stitch every single hair on the goblin's head. 8 months. No wonder this movie took so long to make. The makeup was just so much. I couldn't imagine having the patience to stitch for 8 months individual hairs within a goblin's head. I don't have that kind of patience. And when it comes to the makeup of Harry Potter, the saying "it takes a village" is an understatement. It took over 150 people from 15 different countries to work on the makeup. That's so many people. And you had probably like half of them just doing the goblin heads. The Malfoy Manor, the main scene within Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1, was based off of Hardwick Hall. Except unlike Hardwick Hall, Malfoy Manor was completely made of foam. It was a completely foam set that they used as the background. Could you imagine accidentally running into that and it just going with you? I couldn't imagine the work that that takes into. No wonder there were so many people in the credits. One of the problems with child casting is you may cast a character that looks a specific way as a child, but as he grows up, he changes drastically. One of those characters is Harry Melling, who as a child was a large, dumpy child, but as he grew up, he lost a lot of weight, to the point that they almost recast him halfway through the series, but decided we'll just give him padding. And it was no different within Deathly Hallows. When they had the scene where Harry says goodbye to the Dursleys, they padded Dudley out. That's why he looks a little bit awkward, like, you know, he's this big bulking guy, but, you know, still is shaped a little weird. But it fit with the scene. I don't think you're a waste of space. This is one very small line within the series, but hopefully in the future, Harry and Dudley did get together and work out their differences. In Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, over 500 wands were created, and most of them were broken. They had to be checked in and out for maintenance purposes to make sure that they weren't being stolen, but also just, you know, to keep track of where they were and if they needed to make more wands. But through filming, 500 wands were made, which is crazy. It's a lot of wands. And with those 500 wands, and most of them being broken, the majority of them were broken by Daniel Radcliffe, who, contrary to what Daniel Radcliffe says, broke 80 wands. Mostly because in between scenes he was playing it with as a drumstick. So, you know, kids will be kids, I guess. But 80 wands over 8 movies. That means he went through 10 wands per movie, which when you break it down that way, that's not that much. But still, they made just 500 wands for Deathly Hallows. So how many wands did they make for the rest of the movies? And Daniel Radcliffe's over there breaking 80 of them. Everybody knows Harry's iconic lightning bolt shaped scar, but it was applied among Harry and his stunt doubles over 5,000 times throughout the series. And luckily, it was washable, so he wasn't walking around with a lightning bolt shaped scar when he wasn't filming, because I'm sure after a while, the Sharpie would have stayed on. But it was washable, almost like the dark mark that they used in Half-Blood Prince. The scene in Gringotts, where they break into the vault, had a lot of green screen, but also there were a lot of practical effects. In that scene, there were 210,000 gold coins used. Not real gold, of course, but 210,000 coins were used, which, if they were pennies, that would still be $2,000 of pennies. So I can only imagine how many coins that is. Within Deathly Hallows Part 1 and Part 2, there are so many explosions throughout the whole series, but most of the rubble was made of polyurethane rubber, so if it did hit a cast member, it at least didn't hurt that bad. It's probably more like getting hit with a kickball of some sort, or one of those inflatable exercise balls with a little bit of weight behind it, so it probably knocked them over, but nobody was hurt when they got hit by an explosion, so that's a good thing. In Deathly Hallows Part 2, when we finally get into the room requirements and see the Room of Hidden Things, it is filled with every last prop that was ever used in the Harry Potter series. It was 72 containers worth of props that were used within the Harry Potter series. So many Easter eggs, in fact, that it's just overwhelming if you're trying to Easter egg hunt. But you do have the knight that Ron rode upon. You have the Cornish pixies from Chamber of Secrets and so much more throughout it. But they were able to just take all the props from throughout the series and just shove it in there and burn it. They probably didn't actually burn it, but still, any props that were left over were put in this. So when watching any of the Harry Potter movies, if you see any sort of super artsy prop, it was probably made by Mirafora Mina, who is famous of the pair Mina Lima, who made most of the props for the Harry Potter series. But Mirafora Mina designed all of the Horcruxes and tried to use their inspiration from their mother, who was a jeweler. So that's why there are so many encrusted jewels upon all of the Horcruxes. The final shot filmed within the Harry Potter and Deathly Hallows filming had the Golden Trio on set throwing themselves onto the ground in a blue screen room. It was made to be their final scene altogether. It was not the final scene of the movie, but it was the final scene filmed with the three of them. And as soon as they landed the shot and David Yates yelled cut, all three of them burst into tears because it was the last scene that they were filming together in that movie series as a whole. We all know about Rupert Grint's purchase of an ice cream truck where he drove around and just gave away free ice cream. What a way to use your Harry Potter money. But on the last day of filming, because he knew it was going to be a hard day for everybody, he showed up with his ice cream truck and gave everybody ice cream because he knew how hard of a day it was going to be for the last day of filming for everybody. Not just them, but for the crew itself, because a lot of the crew was in all 8 movies. Watch these kids grow up, and what better way to fight off sadness than ice cream and chocolate. On the final day of filming of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1 and 2, the Golden Trio gave each other gifts. Rupert Grint gave Watson and Radcliffe trumpets that were engraved with personal messages. Daniel Radcliffe gave Grint and Watson still images from the movies. Specifically for Rupert, he gave him the one where Harry is standing on Ron's head, and out of just a joke, he signed them. And then Emma Watson gave both Rupert Grint and Daniel Radcliffe books. Specifically diaries for them to probably log how they felt, because Emma Watson said, hey, it's going to be a hard couple years after this. So, in typical Hermione fashion, she gave them a book. Now, the cast may have given each other gifts on their final day, but they also took some stuff that they wanted as well. Emma Watson kept Hermione's time turner, cloak, and wand. Daniel Radcliffe kept his first pair of glasses that he wore in the first scene that he filmed, which was actually the last scene of Sorcerer's Stone, but also kept the last pair of glasses that he wore in the final scene that he filmed, which I think is kind of special, the fact that he kept both pairs of glasses. It's Tiny Harry's glasses, Adult Harry's glasses. And Alan Rickman stole Snape's wand. They weren't supposed to take any of the props, but I'm sure after 8 movies, most of the crew probably was just like, it's fine, just don't say anything about it. In the final weeks of filming, the Golden Trio had to clean out their trailers that they had probably been living in on and off for 10 years. While Rupert Grint was cleaning out his trailer, he found letters, birthday letters from when he turned 14 from the cast and crew, and became very emotional reading through them because, that was when he was young. 14, he was probably filming Chamber and or Prisoner of Azkaban. So, to look back at how people were so nice to him then, it was probably very heartfelt, especially at the looming end coming up in the next couple weeks of his filming. So he got really emotional when reading those birthday letters. So there you go, Hermione. He does have an emotional range larger than a teaspoon. And the show never stops for the trio. Yes, filming may have ended, but the day after filming, Daniel Radcliffe had to fly from London to New York to be in a play that he was in. Just immediately. Hey, I'm glad we're done filming, but bye. I gotta be in a play tomorrow. My stage time is in 12 hours. My flight takes 18. So, hey, at least he found a job out of Harry Potter. Because I know a lot of characters who do movies and do the same character over and over again usually end up getting typecasted and have a lot of trouble within Hollywood. All right, so that's it for part 1. If you want more of these fun facts, make sure to check out part 2. It will be linked up here once it actually goes live. So make sure to like, subscribe, so you can see it when it comes out. And without further ado, stay marvelous. Knox.